Welcome to the story times. My wife cheated with my cousin and had a baby. My family kept it secret for years, and now they want back into my life as I've found success. Please be patient with me as I explain this entire matter to my family because there is a lot of background involved. I'm a 44-year-old man who has been married for 10 years. My 41-year-old wife and I have been together for 13 years. We are content with our lives and have an 8-year-old kid as well. I have been married before, though. I married at the age of 22, but regrettably, for reasons I'm still unclear, our marriage ended in divorce 3 years later. Since middle school, my ex-wife, who I'll call Amy, has been with me. But before we diving deeper into this story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. And if you love this tale of justice and redemption, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you won't miss out on more gripping stories like this one. We were essentially childhood lovers. We made the decision to be married as soon as we were out of college and had respectable careers. For the first few years, everything was good between us. But then, for some reason, things started to go strange. After that, I felt as though she was not interested at all, despite my best efforts to maintain the spark. A few weeks before our third wedding anniversary, she handed me divorce papers and declared she was done, despite my best efforts to win her back. My goal was to improve our marriage. She was only able to tell me that she was no longer in love with me, which was all I wanted as an explanation for why we had to break up after all this time together. I was furious, but there was nothing I could do about it. Since I had no other choice and didn't want to prolong the divorce and make her even more unhappy by making her live with me, I made the decision to proceed. Because of the limited number of shared assets we had, the process was really simple. I never saw her again after that. After the divorce was finalized, she changed towns and shut off all communication, according to a few people I spoke with. Even my relatives stopped talking to me around the time of the divorce, which was incredibly odd. But this is usual. When I was going through a really trying time, they ought to have been there for me, but instead they began to distance themselves from me. I made a concerted effort to stay in contact with them once the divorce was finalized, but I discovered that I had been blocked everywhere. I even made a few attempts to go see them, but neither my sister nor my parents ever let me in. It all struck me hard because it was so weird and I was already going through a difficult period. I couldn't even bring myself to do anything for a few years following the divorce, so I quit my work and spent a few months at home without a job. But I'm really fortunate to have friends by my side who encouraged me to attempt to move on and do better even during such trying moments. After the divorce, my friends looked after me because my family was never there for me. I ultimately made the decision to open my own eatery. Although it had always been my ambition, I had put it off in order to accumulate sufficient funds because I also needed to consider Amy during our marriage. But because we were divorced, I made the decision to go ahead and do it alone. I also chose to call the restaurant the name my parents had recommended. My buddies helped me approach a few potential investors, secure their support, and begin developing a business plan. I opened my own restaurant a few years later. After the divorce, it took me about 4 years to get back on my feet. I met my current wife 2 years later. We started conversing after she told me she loved my restaurant at a function where we met through friends. I asked her to marry me after 3 years of dating because I wanted to give love another try. Here we are with our son 10 years later. My business life has also improved over the past few years, in addition to my personal life. In my career, I've done fairly well. It all began with a restaurant, but because of its success, we gradually started to grow. I am the CEO of my own hospitality firm at the moment, and we operate a chain of hotels and restaurants that are quite well liked. We intend to grow it even further in the hopes of gaining recognition outside of the state. I have put a lot of effort into getting to where I am now, but it has been a difficult journey. Since of this, I recently agreed to an interview since I felt it was an indication that I had truly made it. However, after seeing that interview on the television, my family decided to get in touch with me again, and I honestly had no clue that it would generate such a storm in my life. I didn't really think my family would have watched it because the channel that carried it was a somewhat popular one. Even if they had, I didn't think they would arrive at my workplace. My workplace's location isn't particularly discreet, so they must have had little trouble finding me. Still, it was highly improper of them to arrive at my place of employment and insist on seeing me while I was there. Regretfully, they did precisely that 3 days ago. Seeing them after all this time was really odd. The receptionist told me that my family was waiting outside when they arrived, even though I was working. I initially assumed she was referring to my wife and kid, which would have been strange given that my son was at school and my wife was at work. She went on to say that my sister and parents were present to see me. I was having trouble processing what was happening at the time. I informed the receptionist that they would have to be ordered to go for the time being, but I would see them later. Naturally, they persisted and were making a scene, so I had to step in. Before I could talk to them and find out what was going on, I didn't want security to eject them from the premises. I therefore walked to the lobby to see them. They immediately pretended that nothing had changed in the over 2 decades since I had last seen them. They started praising me right away, telling me how wonderful it was that I had achieved enough accomplishment to make the headlines and how motivational my tale was. They should have been included in that story as members of my family, so hearing them say it felt odd. They began discussing how they had seen my family, but I tried to dismiss it by telling them I had to return to work. I had mentioned in my interview how helpful my wife and son had been to me along the way. They were referring to certain family images that were also featured on the channel. Since they had been away from us for a while, they began to express a wish to meet my wife and their grandson as soon as possible. At that point, they said I should have done more to reach out to them after the divorce and chastised me for not trying hard enough. It dawned on me that I might at last be able to find out what had transpired at that time. Therefore, rather than telling them to leave, I chose to let them speak. In an attempt to find some closure, I even sat down with them in the lobby. During their conversation, I learned the true reason my family had deserted me and why Amy had chosen to divorce me. Yes, Amy had been cheating on me, as you may have surmised by now. My parents had been helping her hide it the entire time, so I had never suspected it. However, they stated that they had their reasons, or at least, those they believed to be legitimate, so don't pass judgment too hastily. Amy had apparently been having an affair with my cousin, who was the son of my dad's older brother. Everything made sense when they eventually told me. I now saw why they had supported her, why I hadn't received an invitation to any family gatherings for the previous 20 years, and why I had been rejected without any fault of my own. I had never liked my cousin, let's call him Carl, since he was a rude, entitled brat. Unfortunately, his father and the rest of the family felt he should be given a free pass for everything because his mother had died when he was only 6 months old. No one ever told him how to act throughout his life, and he consistently got away with anything. The fact that my uncle, Carl's father, was my dad's supervisor and had founded the family business before my dad joined it didn't help either. When Carl decided he wanted to be with Amy after we were married and she agreed, my family felt compelled to support them. They couldn't take the chance of upsetting my uncle, but apparently it was easy for them to decide to risk their friendship with me. They did precisely that. They also informed me that my uncle made it very apparent during the divorce that he did not want any family members, including my parents and sister, to communicate with me in any way. After Amy said she was expecting my child, they apparently attempted to object. They would have to cut me off if they ever wished to communicate with their grandson. In addition, when Amy filed for divorce, I was never informed that she was expecting a child. I couldn't have predicted because she hadn't been displaying at the time either. She had moved out long before the divorce was finalized, so she hadn't been living with me. Therefore, even before my son was born, I was unaware that I had become a father. It seems that my daughter, who is now almost 20, believes Carl is her biological father even though she has never met me. In any case, my parents told me this about what actually occurred all those years ago. It felt like I was being told a story, and I was hardly able to process any of it at the time. To acknowledge that this was my reality, I had to pinch myself. My family thought that by achieving job security and establishing a bond with their granddaughter, they had effectively cut me off. They had cut me off because, in my opinion, they were simply cowards. They could have simply told me the truth and let me deal with it, but instead they decided to be scared of my dad's brother, acting as though he could do more than just drive my father out of the family business. My dad could have taken legal action in retaliation even at that point. I honestly can't think of a reason why you didn't notify me about Amy's pregnancy or the fact that I have a daughter. They sat on this for 20 years without saying anything until they realized I was doing well in life. They suddenly felt a great deal of pity for everything and wanted to make amends with me. Sadly for them, I was able to see through their deception. I told them I needed them to go as soon as they were done telling me everything because I didn't have the capacity to forgive them right now after what they had just told me. Since we were seated in my workplace's lobby and I didn't want to start a fight, I made an effort to be polite. I couldn't, however, rely on others to act similarly. As soon as I told them to go, they began complaining that I should consider their point of view and how challenging the situation had been for them as well. I informed them that I was positive they were only contacting me now because they wanted a share of my success. They strongly rejected it. My sister even went so far as to argue that they were the reason I was successful in the first place, as they had come up with the name for my restaurant back when it was still just a dream. Given that they hadn't helped me over the years and that I had created everything on my own with the assistance of my friends rather than them, I thought it was rather brave of her to make such a claim. It wasn't enough for them to claim credit for my accomplishment just because they suggested a name. I laughed at her because the idea was so ridiculous. I threatened to have her and my parents ejected from the building if they didn't leave right away. They persisted in their argument, stating that they would not go until we had resolved our differences. But I was not interested in carrying on the discussion. I therefore carried out my promise and had security eject them from the building. As they were being led away, they were obviously very unhappy and tried attempting to convince me that they had no other option. However, I don't believe that. They had an option, but they chose poorly, and now they will have to live with the repercussions. They have survived the previous 20 years without seeing me or my family, so I have no doubt that they will be able to do the same in the future. In any case, they haven't stopped attempting to get in touch with me 3 days after this happened. They haven't had the guts to return inside my workplace, but they have been showing up outside, sending emails to my work address, and texting me on social media. Their attitude has clearly changed as seen by the numerous apologies in their mails. They appear somewhat agitated as they wait for me to stop for them outside my place of employment. However, I ignore them and simply drive past. I almost feel sorry for them now because of how horrible things have gone. To be honest, I've discussed this with my wife because, no matter what I do about my family, we still need to consider my daughter, whom I was unaware of until a few days ago. We have been debating whether or not to track down my daughter and attempt to get in touch with her. We also have to deal with my family, who I don't think will leave until they have another opportunity to talk to me. My wife believes that perhaps I should invite them over and have a conversation with them in order to at least try to resolve the issue. Since this circumstance isn't healthy for my emotional health, she thinks it might help get rid of all the toxicity. But I'm not personally interested in doing it. Given everything I've learned and what I'm going through right now, I don't have the mental capacity to deal with them, so I just want to keep ignoring them till they go away. We are struggling greatly to decide how to proceed and handle this. After 20 years of no communication, I also question whether I'm wrong for not wanting to give my parents another chance to talk. Update 1. A week and 3 days have passed since my initial post, and my spouse and I have made the decision to keep ignoring my relatives. Fortunately, they haven't been showing up to my place of employment for the previous several days. This is most likely due to their fatigue or fear of security. In any case, I'm glad. It was much simpler for me to quit thinking about them after they stopped visiting. It appears that I was feeling guilty about how I was handling the matter because of their presence. I no longer feel bad about not responding to their texts. No matter how many times they apologize, nothing will change. No amount of apologies will make up for the fact that they have failed me as a family. I'm not even bothering to block them anymore, even though they've kept sending messages from different accounts and email addresses. What's the point? I'll continue to ignore them even if they try to apologize by making new accounts. We'll see how long they can continue this. Let's go on to the other problem we are facing, my daughter. Neither my wife nor I knew how to handle the matter. My parents told me where she attends college throughout our talk, so we have her name. I haven't taken any action yet, but my assistant was able to locate her social media profiles. I am unsure of if it is appropriate for me to contact her, and I'm unsure of how to inform her that I am her biological father. I can't just walk up to Amy's house and demand custody or anything because she's not a kid. Furthermore, given what I've learned about Amy, I prefer not to have her involved in this at all. I no longer have any regard for that woman or my family as a whole because they are all cowards with no courage, and I don't want anything to do with them. I can't say the same for my kid, though. She is still my biological daughter, regardless of who reared her. Please let me know if you have any suggestions about how to approach her, or if I should even be doing this. I also want to thank everyone who left a remark on my first post. I hope you can help me again because your advice has been incredibly useful. Update to my wife, and I made the decision to move ahead after reading the comments on my last update. Waiting for the ideal moment or chance to get in touch with my daughter was pointless. We had to remove the band-aid and finish the job. We thought it wouldn't be appropriate to fly out to her because she lives in a different state. So we chose to message her first and see how things work out. We messaged her on Instagram and gave her the most polite explanation possible. We are awaiting a response at this time. She will undoubtedly find it difficult to accept, just as it is for me. The fact that my wife has been so understanding of my efforts to reconnect with my long-lost kid from my previous marriage is beyond me. We're trying our best, but I'm sure it's bringing up a lot of complex feelings for all of us. I would love to establish a relationship with my daughter, therefore I sincerely hope she responds. My parents haven't visited my place of employment in a long time. They wrote me a lengthy email yesterday in which they expressed their sincere regret for everything and they want to mend our friendship. They only required one opportunity. Additionally, they indicated they would wait for me to get in touch with them before contacting me again. To be honest, I'm a little relieved that they finally understood that I don't want to talk to them at this time. The last thing I need is for them to add additional drama to my already full plate. All I can hope for now is that they follow through on their promise and don't get in touch with me again. I will talk to them myself if I feel ready or want to at any time. But at this point, it doesn't appear probable that this will occur anytime soon. The situation has only gotten worse now that I know the true reason they haven't spoken to me in 20 years. I don't think the feeling of betrayal and hurt will go away anytime soon. There was at least one positive outcome from this. I learned more about my daughter, and I'm hoping she will choose to give our relationship another shot. In case she doesn't want to speak with us, I haven't yet told my kid about her. I don't want to give him unrealistic expectations. But if everything works out, he might see her as a sister, and I might meet the daughter I never knew I had. Right now, I'm feeling a lot of different emotions, and I'm making a lot of effort to control them. Update 3. I made contact with my daughter on social media approximately 2 weeks ago. I messaged her, telling her everything about myself and our relationship. I finally got a response today after waiting for 2 weeks. She only mentioned that she had discussed me with her mother, and that she had discovered that I am her biological father. She was shocked by this, of course. She had no notion that she wasn't Carl's daughter, and had thought he was her biological father for the last 20 years. She also told me that she wanted to see me and my family after learning the real tale of how her mother and I got to be this way. Since she doesn't have the money to visit us at this time and isn't talking to her family, we are taking a plane to see her this weekend. She didn't go into too much detail, but Amy first attempted to deny the message when she challenged her about it. But in the end, she had to be honest with her. Since I don't want to talk to Amy, I sincerely hope she doesn't get in touch with me. I haven't heard from her yet. When my family learned that I had contacted my daughter, they promptly betrayed their word and began attempting to speak with me. My uncle was obviously upset that I found out, and rightfully so, as they had worked for 20 years to make sure I never found out so that their lives wouldn't be disturbed. I've learned that my uncle is blaming my parents. My dad still fears his older brother, despite the fact that he no longer works for him and owns his own company. He has been pleading with me to explain that neither Carl nor my uncle were involved in my discovery, but I fail to understand the purpose. They are the only ones who could have maintained such a secret, so even if I did, I doubt anyone would believe me. The majority of my family has never been close to me, and they haven't bothered to talk to me in 20 years. It's amusing how frantic they are right now to keep their friendship with my uncle intact. But to be honest, I don't give a damn. I lost out on 20 years of a relationship with my daughter because of them. This, I believe, is the least I can do. Update 4. I finally got to meet my kid today with my family. It was initially uncomfortable, then moved, but overall it was simply lovely. Despite having grown up with two of the worst people I've ever met, she seems to be a decent and caring person. She is a very mature and clever young woman, whether it is due to her natural disposition or to the fact that they raised her well. During our lengthy talk, we discussed Amy and Carl's situation. She told me that she didn't care that they didn't approve of her meeting us. She doesn't care what her folks think now that she knows the truth. She doesn't intend to eliminate Amy and Carl from her life entirely because they don't have any other children but her, but she will undoubtedly put them out of her life for a while as she tries to come to terms with everything. She informed me that she also needed time to begin developing a relationship with me. I completely understand that she's in really strange mental state at the moment. She seemed to get along well with my wife and her half-brother, and we had a great day overall. During supper, we discovered that my parents, who are her grandparents, had maintained communication with her throughout the entire time. Given that they were her grandfather's brother's family rather than her biological grandparents, she always thought it was odd how sentimental they were about her. Now they understand why they were so devoted to her. But now that she has learned all of this, she and I both view them differently. Since I'm a lot older than her, I can probably relate to her feelings, but not totally. Having been deceived by those she thought were closest to her throughout her life, she is just 20 years old and is likely finding it much more difficult to cope. In any case, we will both need to work on this, and maybe things will improve in the future. We're going to make an effort to make it the greatest it can be, so I know it must be. The fact that the meeting went well and that my family and I both seem satisfied after everything makes me very happy. No matter what Carl, Amy, or my family have done, I'm also rather happy with the situation. The important thing is that we finally have an opportunity to put things right after all these years, and I'm going to take advantage of it. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you, and tell me in the comment about these stories, or we can talk for next stories.